When you think about what the government's role is in regarding how the matters around water are being addressed, one of the biggest issues is ignorance, in the true sense of the word ignorance. That you often have people on the government side with very little knowledge of what it means to live in First Nations communities. Indeed, I've worked with people with, at the time, Indian and Northern Affairs, which now Indigenous Affairs, people who hadn't even been to reserve making decisions for First Nations, or I'll rephrase that, making decisions on First Nations. So what I mean, imposing their decisions, imposing their answers on the people. And it's been based upon their lived experience, usually in larger metropolitan areas, whether it's Ottawa, or whether it's Vancouver, Winnipeg, Calgary, Hamilton, Halifax, what have you. Larger areas and little experience about what First Nations experience and are facing. And too often I've seen that those decisions made based upon a fiscal framework only. While people may say it's not, it always, the end line always comes, what does this mean in terms of the finances? And what people don't recognize when you're coming from that metropolitan kind of perspective, that city perspective, is that your decisions are impacting people's lives. And so there's times people making decisions on somebody else's life, without knowing what they're doing to those other people. Historically, this has been a matter of governments, successive governments for decades, thinking they know better and what's right for somebody else, thinking that we know what should happen. And so it's taking their experiences, their ideas, and forcing it into a community or onto a community and saying your community has to change to fit our answer. And there's little understanding about the context, there's little understanding about the challenges, there's little understanding about the difficulties of being created by doing that. Not just in terms of the oppression where somebody's deciding and implementing something because they are in a powerful position to be able to do that, but also the challenges that come with just even implementing those answers about how do you maintain the upkeep? Something breaks down, how do you manage to get the item that's needed, the broken item, up to a community that's, let's say, fly-in or winter roads only, or even if it's a long drive in the further northern communities. How do you do that? What sort of supports are in place to be able to do that? And that's where you have facilities when they do have some kind of breakdown. Why they stay down is because there's no supports for these kinds of things. So these imposed answers are often creating just as much difficulty as the original issue. What has to change, and to even a greater extent, is what First Nations, Métis, Inuit, what particularly First Nations communities in this case have been calling for, and that is the ability to make the decisions. People from the communities know their community, know the challenges. They'll know, for example, what does it mean to set something up and not have any supports for it. They'll know about which people are in a good position to become technicians, which people may want to become technicians. They'll know about what it means in terms of bringing somebody in to train, or do people go out. They'll know things such as where's the best place for, if it is a treatment facility, where's the best place to do it. So they'll know far more than, say, somebody in Ottawa or another major city making decisions for that community. So two things that comes up with, that. One of them is that the need for engagement with the people, and not just a token kind of engagement. It has to be engagement where people are making decisions and accessing information from those who may have the expertise, say somebody with an engineering background, accessing that expertise so that they can make decisions about their own community, but also for the larger society to live up to its obligations, whether it's through treaty or whether through recognition of the Indigenous rights. Living up to those obligations, maybe in this case human rights even, just to be able to access what all the other Canadians take for granted. That obligation means that what we're going to set up is appropriate for the community, that it's going to be able to run in an ongoing kind of way, and that it isn't something that's just done and you turn your back. So there's a deeper commitment that's needed than what's presently being put in place. And it's bigger than just water. It has to do with respecting what people know about their own communities, their own nations. There's another level that's tied to that, because that has to do with the government level and the particular nation and the government. So I should say two areas, government and nation. But it has to do with the people with the ability to address some of the technical and practical things. So, for example, engineers. That many times there are companies that will come and do things and walk away. They've made their profit. They've made what they need to do, and they no longer have a responsibility. But I would suggest that for all professionals, and whatever your profession is, we do have an obligation to ensure what we're doing is appropriate, making sure that what we're doing meets our profession standards, as well as the standards and expectations of the people we're serving. That we're in key positions as professionals to advocate and voice concerns when we're going to build something that we know is less than what should be. And so there's a bigger obligation other than just the government to First Nations. There's other obligations at play, such as those held by engineers in regarding the treatment of water.